nice and it's not high-end expensive.
Mm,
You're not
okay.
paying $2,500 for a 2-bedroom.
Gotcha.
So what's going on is that you're seeing the rents kind of go back to the way that they are in normal developed cities. And so a lot of owners are looking and they're saying like, oh, well, hey, this bedroom, 2 bedrooms going up, this report that I pulled that averages, it's saying this. And it's like, well, you got to look, there's a difference between median and mean. And then you also have to look at like age of the house. It's not just a bed bath count right now.
All right. Today's podcast, we have Colin Pinto-Martin, and he's from RPM Property Management. What's the official name? RPM? Is it just RPM?
The official name?
Yes. Like what does RPM stand for?
Oh, Real Property Management.
Okay.
Real Property Management,
and
Pittsburgh.
Real Property Management is a franchise, right?
We try to be.
And you guys, the owners live in Utah. They're based out of Utah, came here. They're kind of not, they're not owner operators anymore, but they were.
The whole company was out of Utah.
Okay.
In fact, Sarah, who's the owner with Nate, her uncle started Real Property Management in the 80s.
So they're related to the actual person who started that company.
Yeah, and he just sold like 3 years ago.
Okay.
And so that's when Neighborly took over. Neighborly bought it.
Okay.
And they have like Roto-Rooter, all that. Like they're a company that specifically buys these types of groups and then helps franchise support.
Okay. I mean, I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of companies being bought. Like, for example, I have a friend who works at a car wash, and somebody came through and bought all the Mr. Magic car washes.
Oh, you got to.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of that. Like, there's a lot of companies that you might even be, they might even approach you that they want to buy property management companies.
Oh yeah.
And we've been approached. Like,
so Pure is one of them. So Pure does that. They go out and they buy the company, and then they're like, hey, we'll take care of everything.
Right.
And we'll just give you a cut. You're basically,
yeah.
You're the used to be the starter. Now you're the backup quarterback cheering from the sideline. Sure. And they're like, we'll give you the veteran minimum, and you could stand on the sideline and wear the jersey.
And you get to reap some of the profits as
you don't get concussions. That's it's kind of their pitch.
That's a good way to put it.
But no, Neighborly, the cool thing about that is you get the support. So like when Neighborly goes to Appfolio and says, hey, this is garbage, you need to fix this. It's not just 3 management companies coming at them. It's like 60% of their client base.
Right. All right. Colin is 38. He's originally from Highland Park, right? The Highland Park area. And I assume Highland Park is at Pittsburgh schools?
Yeah.
Okay. So you went to Pittsburgh schools, then you went to college for percussion. So that's musical, drumming, percussion's even piano, right? Piano,
so it is a percussion instrument, but they're way more lame than the real percussionists.
Yeah.
So we tend to not associate with.
And what did I watch you playing today?
That's a marimba.
Marimba. I'm thinking it shows you how ignorant I am. I thought, well, he plays the bongos. Okay.
I do play bongos. I also play washboard.
When I saw you with the paddles, and I was like, wow, and you were killing it, man.
Paddles is the right term.
Oh, okay. Well, I got lucky.
No, it's not.
I'm a drummer, but I did not. Yeah. I'm not classically trained. I'm not. I drummed and I sang in a band for about 3 years. I could probably play band songs and not do the crazy things.
I mean, I bet you've made about as much money as I have.
That's why
when you calculate the student loan debt, I'm still in the negative. So I think net your P&L is a lot better than I am right now.
The gigs were fun, but it was like a full day thing. You'd have to set up.
Oh yeah.
And then play for 3 hours. You're breaking down at 2 a.m. You're getting home at 3. And I just did not enjoy that whole process.
Yeah. And no one's excited to see you. No one comes out like, I want to see this drummer.
I think we made
the people
about
that do
an hour too.
Yeah. Well, the people that go to just see the drummer, you don't want to talk to them anyway. That's a weird group. I'm part of that group, right?
There you go.
Yeah. So that's what I did.
How did you get into the property management business? Because you had written that I asked some background, and you went way back. You went to setting pins in a bowling alley, which I love that. I can remember those days. Like, there was a duck pin Like that's the small,
That is,
oh, and the
yeah,
small
the
pins.
duck pins.
And it was in Bridgeville, and he'd have a guy back there setting them up. It was
Yeah, that
pretty
was
amazing.
Monday night.
Okay.
I just heard in Arkansas, they were like, these labor laws, they're now allowed to work overnight. And I had no understanding that we weren't allowed to work overnight in a bowling alley
Sure.
when I was in sixth grade.
And you were young.
So, yeah.
So
That
set
was
up pins
brutal.
at Sacred Heart and
Yeah.
work summers painting for fresh paint
Oh, yeah.
out of Oakmont. And then it sounded like you started your own painting business.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, I would get sick of working for other people. Like, it would get to the point where you realize, like, oh man, I'm making these people a lot of money. And then I have connections, and fresh was great. And it gets to the point where, like, it's time to move on. And my schedule wasn't one where like I would be a reliable employee. It was, I got to practice at least 9 hours a day. So I got to get my practicing in for 9 hours, and then I got to figure out how to make money so that I can afford to live outside of that. So it's like, oh, well, I'll just put my name out there in the Highland Park Review. I've been in town since the early 90s. So some people have to know me, right? So I would just pick up jobs, and then we would paint, do well. Didn't have any insurance, didn't have any overhead. This is pretty easy money,
Sure.
and so you could still charge the same rates everyone else is. And so, yeah, that's what I was doing. And we were kind of taking that, and it got to the point where when I finished grad school, I was with a buddy, and we were just doing full house renos. So he taught me all the electrical and doing tile work and doing flooring and all that stuff. And then I would do that, and I would do the painting, and we would work. And when it boils down to it, I mean, we were joking about this before we started, like 90% of the job was just showing up when you said you wanted to show up, like we could have had 30 jobs.
That's the bar today.
That's the bar.
That is the
get
bar.
a warm body that is not inebriated to show up at your property when you say you're going to show up.
Yeah.
And you got the job. And so we were flipping a ton in the historic, over in the Mexican War streets. We were doing all this stuff, and it was a blast. It's too much on the body, man. You got to practice on top of that. You get home, you're tired, and then you want to be a good dad, all that stuff. And it just,
where did you transition from that to property management? Was it just directly after that?
Well, so I knew Nate, who's the owner. And at that time he had about 180 units, and it was just him and his wife. And I was doing some stuff with them. And then they had their 5th kid. And I was like, hey, this is a good opportunity. I can get off my feet behind a computer, and they can have some more time to deal with their family, and I can fly into the office. And so then they were like, yeah, sure, why not? So they brought me in, and I started doing the office. And so that's when, at that time I was property manager, maintenance manager, the one-stop call. And then we just kind of grew from there. And once we hit about 350, we started hiring more people, started diversifying, and then my role started slowly getting more and more just, office management, back end stuff.
Right. I see
vision.
in your signature on your email, it's business development manager. So that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Do you still do a manager portfolio, or do you do any of that?
So I kind of like try to be nice to my property managers, right? So if I'm bringing in a portfolio that's difficult, which it seems to be most of them are, like, most investors that are looking at Pittsburgh are saying, we'll buy the worst properties we can find, and then we'll just hire someone to deal with that, and then we'll throw money at it until it's good, right?
So potential owners, are y'all listening to this? Because I got a mirror.
That's
basically what he's saying.
That's kind of what what a lot of people are doing, because that money's coming. They're taking money out of banks. They're trying to find solid investments, and Cleveland and Pittsburgh are popping up as Rust Belt.
Yep.
There's a lot of these places that you can buy, and everything's kind of close to downtown. And for an outside investor in California who's used to going 30 minutes, they're like, wait, this place is only 10 minutes from downtown, and I can buy it for like, 80,000. Why not?
It's 8 million in California.
So I try to not be that mean to our property manager, because everything has to fit in our system eventually. And so I'll manage the portfolios and help out and be on the back end until we stabilize that. And so a lot of times that involves, going downtown, filing a lot of stuff in the Allegheny courts. It includes extra site visit. It includes coming up with creative solutions that are outside of, your internal process. But as soon as I can get them on that internal process, which is the goal, then it's basically on autopilot and it works real well.
Right. That sounds like a good system. We kind of are.
I mean, I'd say
we're very similar, very similar. I think you're more hands-on than I am because I'm just doing multiple things and running a few other businesses. And my wife, she runs the day-to-day, but what we're missing is like that new acquisitions person who can do what you do.
Oh yeah.
I'm missing that person because I'm good at it, but I don't have the time to do it to its full extent. But okay, so you still do manage properties, you get them stabilized, then you turn them over to a property manager.
Yeah.
How many units do you think RPM is now managing now?
We're around 600, active, because it always depends on how many you have versus how many are functional, right?
Right.
Because some will buy and hold and some are on hold for repairs, trying to come up with money. So we're around 600. And then I would say of those that we're actively pushing, it's around 570.
What do you think is what's a reasonable vacancy rate someone can expect? Where are you guys standing right about now? And this is just.
So that depends on your growth, right?
Right.
Because the more you grow, the higher that vacancy and that eviction rate is going to be. Because no one has an amazing portfolio. You know what? I'm going to change my property. So it's just kind of like, all right, well, you're changing for a reason. And so that reason is either there was a miscommunication, there's a vision that you two don't share that same, you're not aligned on that, or you had a bad tenant and you're just like, hey, I'm going to take this out on my property manager and we're going to go find someone else, and so there's a bunch of different reasons, but it's usually because it's not good. And so as we're bringing those on, we typically are between 4 and 5.5% on that vacancy. But it dipped a little higher because a bunch of people started buying it last fall.
Right.
And this was, I don't know if you saw this, but this was the first slowdown we've had since COVID in leasing. Like the market went back to normal.
Yeah, we are we're running really tight vacancies right now, but I think 4 to 5 is very good number. And again, if I take out the ones that aren't ready to be rented, the owners are doing their own repairs or they're waiting for us or they're whatever, man, we're probably looking at a couple % vacancy. If you throw in those new properties that we're just bringing on, trying to stabilize, and then the ones that aren't ready, we're probably at 5 or 6%.
Yeah.
So that's a good number. So there you go, landlords, is if you're doing your calculations, maybe throw in that vacancy rate 5 or 6% just to be safe. Maybe even a little higher. It depends on the property.
Yeah, usually if it's lower, you can kind of up your rents a little bit. And then if it's, it also depends on the size of your portfolio.
Well, let's jump into that. I didn't even have it on my list, which is I've been seeing increase in rents recently. Past 2, 3, 4 years.
Rented out or just marketed?
Have you seen that? And are you seeing them kind of stabilizing or actually dipping now?
Okay. So market rents have not gone up. Oh, super clear. In Pittsburgh, market rents have not gone up. What has gone up is people investing and buying high-end units, right?
Okay.
And so what you would say 10 years ago, you could rent out a B- property in Shadyside for an A level price, right? You're like, this is it's got walls and half of a roof. And so you got to pay a ton of money to go here because there's nothing else. But then all of a sudden you see, not just on Baum Boulevard where all that high end stuff went up, but right over there on Baum and I believe it's
Bigelow, the main road.
Yeah, right up by Bigelow. There's massive. They just built all of this housing and it's nice and it's not high end expensive. You're not paying $2,500 for a 2-bedroom.
Gotcha.
So what's going on is that you're seeing the rents kind of go back to the way that they are in normal developed cities. And so a lot of owners are looking and they're saying like, oh, well, hey, this bedroom, 2 bedrooms going up, this report that I pulled that averages, it's saying this. And it's like, well, you got to look, there's a difference between median and mean. And then you also have to look at like age of the house. It's not just a bed bath count right now. And so that's what's kind of confusing a lot of the owners that we're seeing is they're used to a totally different market if they're coming from out of town. And so Pittsburgh, though, NPR even reported, they said after COVID, there was close to a 50% hike in rents in Miami. They said that
Wow.
was the highest in the city. And they mentioned Pittsburgh. They said Pittsburgh is the lowest at like 2.5%.
That's crazy. 50% is
Yeah.
just unbelievable. 2.5% seems to be like the average, average appreciation of.
Well, so you're getting squeezed because of that.
Mhm.
And so you have a ton of owners where their taxes are going up, inflation is going up, the cost to make repairs right now is going up. How many vendors? I mean, you know it. So many vendors are getting bought out by bigger vendors in the city, and then all of a sudden their rates triple.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, we don't need you.
Man, I'm not seeing that.
We need one."
You do a lot more. I think your company and you guys are doing a lot more higher end than we are. Our average rent's probably 850.
Oh yeah.
900.
So we're around 1150 is our average.
That's a big difference, and we do try to stay, in our lane and what we're good at. So
Yeah.
we're not going after high end stuff, and high end to us is like a high end rental to us is probably about 2,200. That's probably the highest end rental we have. But most of our average is probably 900, 850.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at a 3-bedroom, the majority of our 3 bedrooms, 500 a door.
Mm-hmm.
You're at 1,500.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not seeing that push. I don't know if you're seeing that push. I just think owners are getting squeezed because materials are going up, labor's going up, all this stuff is increasing. And so we're trying to keep our prices as low as possible because we're not seeing that rent pick up at the same rate.
Right. Now that's a good point. And I've talked to so many different, I asked that question to just about everybody I talk to who has their finger on the pulse, and I get different answers from everyone.
Oh yeah. I mean, it depends on your portfolio, where you're running.
I haven't seen the rents go skyrocket, and I haven't seen that. What I have done though on my own portfolio, and we're starting to do it more with our owners, is we are increasing rent every year.
Yeah.
Now that depends. Like I don't get greedy with it. Like on an $800 rental, I'm going to raise your rent probably $45.
Yeah.
Because I have rentals that I've owned for the longest 30 years, and some tenants I've had for 15 years, and I haven't raised their rent, and that's just not fair to me, just because of what's going on with the economy. So,
yeah, what we do is we look at our owners, and the conversation that we typically have is we try to say, you need to find a number where you can sustain your building. And that number should not be dependent on the tenant that you have in there or the situation. It should be dependent on how much money do you need in order to not have your property go to garbage, right? So if you're at a point where you're like, hey, we got this tenant in there, everything's going really well, but if one thing goes wrong, I can't pay for it, your rent's too low. It's not worth having that tenant. And so that's kind of where
I could
we
be
push.
the devil's advocate there.
Oh yeah.
So what the owner wants or needs, the market doesn't care. So maybe they paid too much for it.
Well,
So
potentially you're having this conversation with
Yeah.
someone before they bought the property.
it wants you and I know
That's the
'cause
best.
I'm an agent too. I
Yeah.
don't sell a lot of real estate any longer, but when I do, I'm very cognizant of my client because one, I have to live with that. I have to live with that property. Like if I promised them I can get you X amount of rent, I better perform and make sure I can get that and sustainable, and not one time where I just get any schmuck off the street who wants to pay $1,000 a month and it's only worth 800, and then I'm evicting them. So there's a lot of agents out there, and this is to the general public, that they're just looking out for their commission, and that's human nature. It's your job to do the due diligence and make sure that those accurate market rents are correct. And that's where you reach out to someone like Colin or myself, and you say, because I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, when I get reached out to, my number's lower than what's on the MLS, and my number's lower than what the agent's telling them.
Well, so I'll give you a solid example. We had an owner reach out to us, bought a duplex in Sheridan, right? They said, hey, we kind of need to go a different way with management. We had the great buying process. It was excellent. It's been on the market 2 months. We haven't been able to find anyone for either side. Can you go take a look? Show up, lawn's not cut. It's summer, broken window in the front, garbage on the porch, open the doors, lights are out. Nothing,
Right.
It became very apparent that it was, they got the sale. And then it was just kind of like, well, it's on the owner's side of things to make sure that this is ready to go. And I bet the conversation was, we'll be happy to list this for you for rent. And the owner was probably on the side of like, well, we're in this together. We're a partnership rather than just like a one-off type situation. And so that was a really good situation where here's this owner from California that doesn't understand. That's a long 5 minutes, right?
It certainly is.
That is a long 5 minutes from where they were. And I started to tell them, I was like, look, this community is in rough shape. They closed the high school. You know, they brought that high school that was in Sheridan. They put it over with Brashear. There were a lot of problems with that. Economically speaking, they've had some things that are going out. There's nothing that's really driving the industry for people to live in this neighborhood, especially with a bunch of housing that's being built right along 276 going south, because everybody got super excited that, you know, a ton of businesses are going to start coming in here and blah, blah, blah. And this was all information that, you know, they didn't get when they bought the house. And so, like, to your point, when you're going to make these purchases, if you reach out to a property manager who is going to be biased because they're looking at it from their standpoint, like what's going to be fitting well in my portfolio, I think you have to take that 100%. You got to take that into account.
And I would say in most cases, man, it's probably 8 out of 10 owners, they probably didn't do their homework and they're slightly underwater, or the expectations were here and the reality's here. And then you and I and your property manager are kind of kept cleaning that up and having that conversation. And that's not a good place to be, but that's what we do.
But it's not, you know, that's our duty, right? Like that's what it is, to be honest. And I was just, you know, I was watching HGTV while I was in a waiting room, and they had one of those California flippers, and I know it's all TV, right?
That's what my wife likes to watch.
And the person,
I can't watch that.
They flipped it, right? And then the person goes, well, you know, what do you think you can get for this? Is like, well, you know, to break even, we need 430. So we're going to go for 490. And then the guy goes, well, a comp up the road is only 470. And it's like, and that one has off-street parking. It doesn't share this. It names all these things. And they're like, we think we can do it. And I just had like this PTSD where I'm like, yeah, I think it's human nature to be optimistic and see the best thing. And that's why a lot of investors go after this, because they have this vision in their head, and it inspires them and it makes them happy. At least those are the owners we want to work with, right? There's people who are passionate about doing this and care about the community. And so it's just finding that middle ground between, you know, your years of experience and trying to not let all the negative things or the disappointments or the failures that have happened creep into your bias when you're giving advice to other people. You know,
that's a good point. So how many, you probably have a lot of horror stories, but can you share one that's not, I don't know, just share a horror story with us? I mean, I got a bunch, but maybe one that's maybe a little funny too. Throw it out there. Let's throw some humor in here.
Oh, thanks. I haven't been that funny this whole time. No, I mean, I think the biggest, oh gosh, it's like you have a flood. Every day you wake up and it feels like you get caught in this thing where you're like, I've seen it all. There can't be anything that's possibly worse. And then I feel like sometimes there's like this contest that is maybe on some board in Reddit where these people get together and they're like, how can we make their whole sense of reality fall apart? Right. And I think the worst,
there's a conspiracy that
at least, I mean, we used to manage 25 units in New Kensington, and it wasn't necessarily New Kensington. It was in Arnold. And for those of you that don't know, that's an even farther 40 minutes from the city.
Okay.
And it's a massive project built, massive high rise right down there. And in the market there it's a shell game. So it's like, how can I stay in one place as long as possible before they figure it out? Right.
Okay.
And so when we took over this portfolio, we had to go through every door and meet all the people and do the keys, and we were doing all our due diligence. One of them answered the door straight up in her underwear. And I was just like, I am so sorry. I feel very uncomfortable right now. And like my face looked uncomfortable, everything about me. And she was like, no, come on in. We had a 10-minute conversation about her lease, her rentals, any problems with her apartment. She didn't put on any clothes. She stayed in her underwear for the entire conversation.
She was comfortable.
She was very comfortable, and I did not want to criticize that boundary or the level of boundary. I would just say that my boundaries are at a very different rate. You know, and then you leave and you go down the road and then you meet someone else. And then it turns out that they have an underground fight club that they run out of the basement of the house that you're visiting.
What? Let's say today, you get a call and I have a 25 unit in Arnold.
Yeah.
No joke. Would you accept that, or would you entertain that, or would you probably say probably not?
I'd refer that to someone I don't like. Is that okay? I'd call someone up that's made me mad in the past month.
How does that conversation go? Because I get those calls all the time.
I am very polite. I think the big thing you have to understand, and owners, again, when owners are watching this and trying to invest in Pittsburgh and looking at what
about when because you have agents that refer business to you. What about when an agent refers someone like that? Because I have to turn down those clients and be kind to the agent too.
Oh, I always give it a shot with if it's a referral. And so I'll give it a shot, but I'll just be very clear on where my boundaries are. We don't cut corners. We don't use, like, all our vendors are licensed and insured. And so when I come to a situation, I go, this is now what we provide. And I think we're in a position as a company where we've failed enough times where we know where that boundary is. And so we've learned from those failures. Where an owner reaches out to you, they're like, hey, I got 30 units. And you're like, cool. And they're like, but I don't want to pay that for maintenance. And you're like, yeah, fine. We'll make this happen. We need 30 units. And then 3 months later, you're like, why did I ever agree to that? And so,
my wife should be in on this because I make those decisions sometimes. And, you know, they're cleaning it up, unfortunately.
Well, that's running. I feel like running a business really is just failing in public.
Well, you said it earlier when you said you get if we bring a property on, you make sure it gets stabilized before you turn it over to it, because that's really not fair. And I've gotten a lot better at that. But I just want to know how you handled that conversation. And it sounds
we would say, yeah, and I would be really nice to the owner. I would say, that's awesome that you have that. Our company is not set up to make you money. And that's the important thing that I think we kind of lose at the end of the day, is that the point of us existing is to make them money. And so if someone's coming to you and you know it's going to be a bad situation, the best answer is, I can't make you money here. And I'll offer advice. I won't end it there. I'll stay on the phone and you know, talk a little bit, work it out, see if there's something we can brainstorm together that would be a good option for them. So I'll say, what you're looking for is, you're looking for a real estate agent that lives in New Ken, that's seasoned and is a little hungry for work.
Right.
And then they can put that elbow grease in. Them going to a house to shut down a fight club and make a 911 call is a 2-minute trip for them, not a 45-minute trip on a Saturday night. Right.
That's a good answer. I don't think I'm going to be able to make you any money here. That's a really good way of saying, I don't want your property, but I wish you the best. How do you handle the applications? Like, what is your process when, let's say it's a new property manager, someone who's not seasoned, and, you know, they show the property, I'm assuming that the tenant can go online and fill out their application. And then everything's there. Do you get pay stubs? Do you want copies of driver's license? How does that look in your business? And I'll explain how we do it and compare.
We hire someone to do all that. Today there are just way too many scams out there. And so we hire a company, and if they can't verify it, because someone could just open up a computer, change the name on a pay stub, download one from online, you know.
It's true.
It's not that hard.
We've had that happen.
So what they do is they verify the deposits going into their account. And so if someone says, I make this much money, they got to go in and they enter their banking information, and they go in and they say, hey, in the last 3 months, these are the deposits that have gone in. And so I've had
Gotcha.
people reach out and they've given us pay stubs that don't match what's going in their account.
No kidding.
And we go,
Okay.
hey, we're really sorry, but we just can't. And that way, everything's fair housing, everything's covered. Like that company specifically, all they do is applications.
Okay.
And
I might have to look you up for those.
oh
But
yeah,
we
man.
have, we're doing that all ourselves, and you're going to miss things. And I'm sure the company who's doing it they can miss things too. But what do you do in a case where everything checks out, but they're just kind of marginal? Maybe you can't get a landlord reference. You know how hard that is sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And what on the ones that are on the fence, how do you handle that? What's the extra step that you take to just kind of verify that these folks are going to be good people?
We reach out to the owner, right? And we make it all about financials. And so some owners are in a situation where, like, at the end of the day, they either qualify or they don't. And so we try to, if there's any question on the financial of this could go either way, we push that to the owner and we say, is this a risk that you're willing to take? Because at the end of the day, we're not taking that much of a risk. And so some owners, if the mortgage is paid off, they might kind of say like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Our credit score is 700. Maybe they have a 500 credit score, but it's because they just got a divorce and they've proven that they make more than 3 times the amount of rent.
Okay.
We would reach out to the owner and say like, hey, we think this is solid. We did the background checks. We don't see anything, but what are your thoughts here? And so
I think at the end of the day, we'd probably do pretty much the same thing. You might do it a different way because you use that outsource that from that company. But yeah, we'll leave it up to the owner to decide, because you can only get so much information. Then there's always that gray area. And then there's a risk reward factor that you just have to put it on.
Yeah. And the big thing that we've found after doing a lot of studies and training is just this idea of, we try to keep our feeling out of it. We want the numbers to speak for themselves, because as hard as you can try, we know their personal information. And through the studies and the training, there's implicit bias. And so if we're the ones making that call, there's no guarantee that our implicit bias is not playing a role. And so what we say is, all right, we have the numbers, they're borderline, but they do meet a lot of the qualifications. Let's send just all the financial stuff to a person who has never met this and is only looking at the numbers and can do a risk reward versus that. And then that way we make sure that we're in compliance with the fair housing.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah, that's what you are, keeping your gut and your feeling out of it. If you could pick maybe 2 or 3 things that we can give to our audience, that just for a landlord who may not want to use a property management company, what would those 2 or things be that they should focus on most importantly to find tenants, keep tenants, be a good landlord? What kind of advice can you give to a landlord?
Yeah, so my parents bought us a house after grad school that we rent. They didn't buy it and give it to us. I'm not that lucky, or else I wouldn't be working. So they bought one, Forest Hills, and we flip it, and we've been renting it from them. And then we wanted to redo the sidewalk. And I was like, Dad, I watch a bunch of YouTube videos. Let's rent it. I've done everything else. Try it out. He was like, yeah, sure. Come here. Took me to his house. We went to the back. He said, you see that? I said, yeah. Pointed out this piece of concrete. Really weird. He's like, I tried to do that on my own. And look at it.
It's all crooked. And
yeah. He's like, I'm really good. You think you could beat that? And I was like, all right, we'll either wait on it or hire someone. And, that's when you look at someone who doesn't want to hire a property management company, there's really only 2 options there. There's one where the majority of your life is going towards this portfolio, right? Like, it is a part of who you are. It's a part of your identity, and you thrive on that. Or 2, it's a crooked slab of concrete waiting to kind of fall apart. And that's what I've seen when we bring on owners who have never used property management companies before, where they have this idea of everything is going really well. And then we get in there and we're like, well, you don't know what you don't know here. And this is all just one straw away from collapsing. And, you know, so we have to take on that position in that role. Like I had one owner, she said, these things were never this bad before we brought you on. And I said, well, I understand, you know, your hesitation and the difficulty of having to make these repairs, but these repairs didn't happen in a month. You're talking about systematic roof leaks that have been going on for 20 years and visible mold. And we can't put students' lives at risk like that. Like I can't put my name on that, or, you know, and so that's kind of the situation, is they don't know what they don't know, or it just takes over their whole life, because that's what you need in order to make rentals function, a large portfolio function, you know?
I do talk to owners that have done it a while. The woman, it was two months ago, she sat in that chair and I said to her, look, I can almost guarantee, this lady was on top of her portfolio. She had about 4 homes. She had somebody come and spray for weeds in the lawn. She had the gutters cleaned a couple times a year. She had the windows washed.
Yeah.
I said, okay, we are not going to be able to do as good of a job as you. And she looked at me like, really? Why do you say that? I said, because I'm telling you, you are a hell of a property manager. You're a great landlord.
You want to come work for us?
I mean, we ended up managing her property, but I was totally upfront with her. I said, when tenants call us, they'll get a call back the next day. They're not going to get we're not going to pick up for a broken screen door. Like, you are probably answering your phone 24/7, because it's such a hard business. You know?
No, but like you look at, well, like what's the bar of acceptable? And obviously and I do this in percussion in the musical background. Like there's a level that I have to perform at in order for me to be worth the price of a ticket for entry, you know? And then there's the Sid Crosby level, right? You know, and so it's like the owner sounds more like on the level of a superstar. And you're kind of like, well, you have to understand that, like, that's not a sustainable business model for someone who's trying to take this to scale. What we're doing is we're doing professional, and our job is to make you money and retain the value of your house. And I guarantee we can do that. Like, we can take care of your house and make you money. But we're not out here. I'm not going to go, like you said, wipe a window clear when there's a storm. You know, I'm not heading out.
I was upfront and honest with her, and she appreciated that, and I did get her business. So being a property management owner, company owner, and you are not the owner, but man, you're running a lot of that business, and you're seeing the new clients come in and get and go away, and it's just as important to not just assess like the 25 unit in Arnold.
Yeah.
If I had an amazing owner who there's no holds barred, they will do whatever it takes to make that property right.
Yeah.
I might consider Arnold.
Oh,
I don't send me those referrals like tomorrow, but
no, I like you.
I might consider Arnold.
Do that too.
But if I have a property in, we're not shitting on Arnold. We're picking on Arnold right now.
No, it was just a very traumatic
if I have
for me, that's all.
Fight Club and the underwear.
Yeah.
So if I have,
they have a Wendy's though. It's a good Wendy's out there.
It's up and coming.
Yeah.
If I have a property like that and an owner who mirrors that, I can't, your words, I don't think I can make you any money here. Yeah. And that's, so a good owner is more important to me than the property. The property is secondary, but the property is also, and the area is important too.
So we got a referral from one of your agents that was doing sales, and it was someone who was buying in the city, and they're less than desirable areas, and the rents are around like 600. And the plan was, hey, we need to, like, it's not sustainable. The properties are in poor condition. There's questions of, are they safe? And so we need to first help the tenants realize that their life is more valuable than rent, right? And that's the one thing that always strikes me when we're dealing with tenants in these situations, is that they believe that paying $600 in rent is worth their life, and putting their life in danger, and it is not. We can hook you up with a lot of programs that'll help find you something. and we'll go through that. But like, that's a hard line that we draw where we're like, we're not going to support this type of landlord relationship.
Right.
And so the idea is, but and the owner came to us and we said, all right, well, we'll start this process. We'll do this. We'll do the non-renewals. We'll hold the leases. And here's our game plan. And the owner looked and said, yeah, we don't expect to make money for a little over a year. And I was just like, you can add as many units as you want. And I'll bend over backwards for you here, because that, like you said, that's someone who understands what you're going through and appreciates the work that you're putting in is great.
Appreciation is a good way, a good term, a good word to throw into this sentence, because that's really important, just to appreciate what the property manager is doing for you. And you know what? Some owners get a bad rap because there are a lot. I mean, not that you and I are. I think probably you and I have probably two of the best property management companies in Pittsburgh, and I truly believe that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of property management companies that should not be doing property management, and you're better off not hiring someone who's going to make it worse. So all I can say is to the general public, make sure you do your due diligence, ask the right questions. And I have, I did a podcast on it. It's just a 10-minute one, but it's just asking the right questions to the property management company.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's so important.
We did one, we took over a lease and I went to go pick up keys, and everything was out of his living room. And he he answered the door like in his underwear. Like, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about me. I give off this vibe where like I'm totally cool with conducting business meetings, sub-dressed, you know. But it was just this idea of like, oh my gosh. And then obviously it went to court, and the tenant was claiming, no, I paid all my rent up front for a whole year. And the property manager was saying, no, they didn't. And then like, there were no records of anything. There was nothing. And you're just like, oh, you have no training in this. You're just like, oh, I can collect rent for people and I can open up an LLC.
Do your homework, folks, because
they exist.
It's very important. This is like sales, because I've done a ton of sales. I've never been in a courtroom.
Yeah.
Over 2,000 sales in my sales career. We've been sued multiple times in the property management world, just slip and falls. Yeah. Lady slipped and fell down the steps and it was snowing out. And these steps were kind of treacherous, and she should never use them. She has an interior set of steps that she could have gone down every day, 8 days a week. But you get sued because of that. And sometimes you lose because the courts are just set up that way. So it's very litigious. Make sure you do your homework. Make sure you have good insurance in place. It should be incorporated or have an LLC just to protect your personal assets if at all possible. If it's in your personal name, then that's fine. If you want to just make sure you have a good insurance policy with $1 million liability and maybe an umbrella policy.
And I think the big thing that a lot of owners don't understand is that Pennsylvania is very tenant leaning. Pittsburgh is very tenant leaning.
Yeah. It's a difficult business. So
we had Penn Hills.
Be nice to your property.
Houses falling into the earth. You remember that? The big rainstorm 2 years ago where like Penn Hills, literally sinkholes were opening.
Okay.
And they were shutting houses down.
Wow.
We had a basement flood and we had the plumbers out there same day. And I showed up because I was in Forest Hills. I was like, let's go check it out. They pulled the manhole cover. The water was all the way up to the top at a standstill. And they were just like, there's nothing we can do. We can't, like, it's not a snake issue. Your house is the lowest lying house on this block. And it came in.
What can you possibly do there?
So everything subsided after a day. Everything drained out. Had the plumbers, they cleared it. And then we had everything cleaned up in about 5 days. We added downspouts, tried to divert. Same thing happened again about a month later with another downpour. And we told the tenants, we were like, look, you can leave the lease. Because we did what we thought we needed to do to get this done. Sure. We told the owners, we're like, let's let them out of the lease. They won $10,000 in court against the owner.
Kidding. Wow. Well, that does not surprise me.
And and like we went to the judge and we were saying, like, what did we do that like a homeowner wouldn't do?
Exactly.
Like what's the situation here? And so where's that line between us behaving like we're a homeowner, like it's our property, and being a bad landlord? And I like went over it so many times. I was like, I can't think of anything else that I would have done differently if it were my house.
We use that analogy a lot too. Say, if this was my house, I would do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like when my refrigerator goes out, I can't have a refrigerator there tomorrow. It's probably going to be, it might be 2 or 3 days especially with the way the supply chain is right now.
Yeah.
So Mr. Tenant, how can I possibly get you a refrigerator when I have to go out in my own house and get a cooler and get some ice, put the food in? So,
or you make a claim on your renter's insurance.
Yes. We could go on. There are so many topics, many topics.
Sorry.
Now we haven't even touched the surface, because renter's insurance, liability insurance, how do you monitor the renter's insurance? How, rent increases? Do you have, we could go on for hours. Maybe we'll do this again and I'll be more detailed on everything.
You want to pick up a specific topic, I would be more than happy to come back here and make fun of you about it.
This is good stuff. And I'm fine. Make fun of me. But I really do appreciate now Colin Pinto-Martin.
That's it.
He is
hyphenated,
a master's degree in percussion, right?
That's it. Yep.
Where can they find you if you want people to visit you for property management and what you love to do?
Yeah. So, well, I love property management.
I'm sure you do.
You can come to Seton LaSalle High School and see me playing drums with their show Oklahoma, because they hired a professional orchestra. That's running this weekend. So for us, rpmpittsburgh.com is the best. RPM Pittsburgh. I think if you search, I don't want to throw anything around here, but if you search property management in Pittsburgh, we're the first organic that pops up.
I bet you are, because I do see this. I do zero of the Google search stuff, but
but no, there's that. And then I actually have a handle on Instagram at Pro Percussionist. And it's interesting because a lot of people kind of say like, well, why, how do you make that shift? And it's more the thought is, oh, well, you just need money, so you got a real job, right? And the answer is, well, no. I really acted on getting money, right? I thought, I'm just going to do what I love to do, and I'm going to make the decisions and go into places where people are positive and surround myself with those types of people. And there's a lot, like it's a different world in here in this aspect of, I hinted at it earlier. Property management companies, when you own your own business, you fail in public. And when I'm on stage, if every performance that I do, every thing that I put out to the public, I learn from that and I grow from that. And I feel like the majority of people who set out to do a business and set out to work, it's when they don't accept their failures and learn from those where they get in the most trouble. And then you start hearing things of like, oh, well, you can't hire good employees, or, all my owners are blah, blah, blah. Like where they start blaming all these exterior factors,
right.
And
they don't look inward and say, what could I have done differently? And how can I learn from this?
You learn and grow from that. And so I think that's one thing I pull significantly from the music world is I give myself correction every day on my music, on my playing, on how I interact with owners, how I've dealt with situations. And I've failed multiple times, but it's just like, you just get better each time.
That's a good insight, a good internal view of who Colin is. And
that's about a 7-episode series.
And we forgot to focus on the most important thing is you're married and you have 2 children.
I do.
And how old are your children?
They are 7 and 9.
7 and 9.
They are the best.
Boy, girl, what?
Yeah, no, the youngest is a girl, the oldest is a boy. And they each come with their own things.
Oh yeah. Those are children.
We do. Yeah. We were hit,
different.
I grew up pretty sheltered. I grew up in the city, but like nothing was ever really wrong. My dad worked. We didn't have too much money, but we had more money. After you start property management, you see kind of what poverty really is. And you realize like, oh my gosh. And so we were hit kind of hard once we found out my daughter has neurofibromatosis, which is like a genetic disease where you grow like tumors in your brain and on your nerve endings, and it can manifest in a bunch of different ways. And it's
Oh
not
my
as
goodness.
uncommon as people think. But like having that happen with my daughter, was kind of a great reframe on like what I value. Right. So like up to that point, it was always, I need to progress. I need to be successful. I need to do this. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, whether or not the reality is like something that you love dearly could be taken away at any moment, which isn't our case. We're so grateful for that. But like that's the reality for some people. Like maybe there should be a shift in what you feel is important, you know? And so it's that idea of like, well,
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it takes something like that to really show you what is important and put everything into perspective, I guess, so to speak.
like why with people who are mean? You know,
Absolutely. Yep.
it's not worth the door.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to ask you to leave right now.
Fair
Colin,
enough.
it was a pleasure. I met Colin just through he was taking over a property that we had managed because I believe we had fired the owner. Colin he'll probably end up firing the owner. I don't remember, but I was impressed with as quickly as
it's the vision. You had a different vision, and it's
our vision.
okay.
I don't think we can make you any money.
It's
it's
okay.
I got to get that phrase down.
Leaving a company and saying goodbye to an owner does not mean that either people are inherently bad.
Well, here's one I use, and I learned this from one of my first. He was my mentor when I got into sales. He said, "I'd rather turn you down than let you down." So maybe you can use that to.
Yes,
it is true though. I would rather have turn down your business versus take it on, then you not perform to your expectations because reality is here, your expectations are here. It's just a win-lose. It's a lose-lose for everybody. But
how different is your business today than it was 5 years ago?
I don't know if it's the same. What are your thoughts?
Mine's very different.
Is it?
And so when you look at an owner that you brought on 5 years ago, you say like, are we serving you in the same capacity? And if we're not, that's okay. Maybe we've just grown apart.
Okay. No, when you say it that way, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like even just something as small as staff turnover. So it's just like what you value is important, what you do, where you feel a niche, where you feel drawn towards, all of that can change. And so saying goodbye to an owner doesn't mean that you failed them.
And it's not the money either that drives me. It's the money is secondary, but I want to feel good about being able to help an owner. And I know my staff likes to be able to help people, and they appreciate the staff, and it's just a win-win for everybody. And then I get paid, and I feel even better.
Yeah, and that's why I always try to leave it on a good note.
Absolutely awesome. But the reason I had you come in because he returned emails and he responded quickly. And my wife was like, "You need to get Colin in here because he's a very good property manager. Maybe we can have him on our team someday." But I can see that you are.
I don't know if I can make you any money.
I can see you're not going anywhere, but I'm glad to call you a friend now. And hopefully we can start referring business because I don't really have anybody that I can refer business to. And be honest with you, if I was to refer somebody to you, I'd be honest with you and let you know, here's the problems we had with us. Maybe you can do a better job. And then you decide if you want to do business.
It's not good. It's not better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah, just different.
Maybe you can meet them.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, this is a blast. We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely.
Pick a topic.
I will.